We often think of outliers as these rogues that act alone and do magnificent things. Sometimes terrible things, sure, but magnificent all the same. But I believe that everyone is an outlier. It just depends on the context. You are an outlier. You are an outlier. And you get a car. No one gets a car, don't get excited. An outlier is differing than, meaning there needs to be some sort of normal for them to be different from. There needs to be a common in order for there to be an outlier. There needs to be a wolf pack in order for there to be a lone wolf. And sometimes you're the different, and sometimes you're the normal. The trick is knowing which is you and where you stand. Can I tell you a story? Of course I can. I'm the one with the Britney Spears microphone. I do what I want. There's this guy. We'll call him Cody. Cody was the cultural outlier in his job, and not in a good way. He was going against the flow. He was the non-wolf in the wolf pack. He was jazz in the middle of dubstep. He thought it was his fault. He was doing his work, and he's very good at his work, but he wasn't happy. He didn't know why. He would go home to his wife, and he would ask, "What's wrong with me?" Then Cody got another job, hoping, miraculously, that something would be different, and something was. But unfortunately, not only was he a cultural outlier in this new position, he was now an outlier in his skills and strengths. He wasn't doing his best work. It was clear this was not a good fit. And at this point, Cody had a choice to make. He could either settle and show up to a job that he hated, or he could keep looking, job interview after job interview, trying to find that elusive, perfect fit. Well, chalk it up to being a millennial, but Cody didn't settle. Now he's at a place where it just makes sense. He's doing good, challenging work, using his skills and strengths in a way that only he can. He is culturally in the flow. He is a wolf among wolves. He is jazz in the middle of more jazz. He is now appropriately balanced with the people around him. Notice how I didn't say, and he's just like everyone else. No, I said he's balanced. He doesn't have to be like everyone else. Cody is fitting as perfectly as he can in the Cody-shaped hole that existed within that team. He's still an outlier, but now he is a positive outlier. And at this point in the story, you're probably expecting me to say, and Cody is actually me, but it's not. It's a friend of mine, and his name is actually Cody. But it may as well be my story. It may be many of yours as well. But the question you may have is, what is a positive outlier? Good question. That's why I'm here. I like to think of teams as having a shape. Each team has its own form made up of outliers. Imagine a rubber band being stretched around a set of pegs on a pegboard. Now, these are not dramatic outliers, but they help to give this team their shape. Lots of other pegs can fit inside this shape without affecting the shape of the team, and that's normal, that's healthy. But if a new outlier enters the scene, well, then the shape of this team changes. You can see how the inverse is also true. If the purpose of this team, though, were to be a circle, well then a peg placed here would not be a good fit for the team or for the peg. But if the purpose of this team were to be a diamond, well then this same peg becomes a positive outlier, even critical outlier in defining the shape of this team. But notice that the peg didn't need to move at all. But why is that peg placed there? That's the question you should be asking. I'm so glad you did, but please don't jump ahead. I'm getting there. Cody probably feels like he got lucky. He probably feels like he hit the jackpot by finding the one team that had the Cody-shaped hole in it. What are the odds? But why does that work for Cody as a negative outlier in one team, becoming a positive outlier in another without having to change anything? I believe that the social and professional identity of a person is made up of three specific identity drivers: personality, proficiency, and preference. And the measurement and comparison of these three facets of a person help us identify why outliers are outliers and if they even should be. The first is personality. These are the combination of qualities that make up one's character. This affects interpersonal relationships. You can articulate your own personality by identifying how you focus on information, how you make decisions, how you get your energy, and how you relate to the outside world. The second identity driver is proficiency, your skills and strengths. You are judged in the workforce and in social settings by what you're good at and what you're best suited for. Now, part of that is biology. Take me, for example. I am not a basketball player, or a football player, or a rugby. I don't sports very well. I am a writer. I'm a nerd, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. I've learned to deal with it. At parties, I don't get asked to carry tables around, but I'm pretty sure I can get your sound system working. So I still get invited to parties. Don't worry about me. The third and final identity driver is preference. The things that you would do socially and professionally if you had your way completely. It's choosing an environment that's more competitive or one that's more cooperative, one that's means-oriented or one that's mission-oriented. It's not a matter of choosing right or wrong or lesser or better. It's simply answering the question, what do you prefer? When people with the same preferences get around each other, that's when a culture is its strongest. And the combination of these three identity drivers make up one's whole social and professional self. It's a dangerous and complicated cocktail of elements. And it gets even more complicated because these things, they change over time. And I haven't even included unconscious bias, peer influence, social pressure, personal values, or faith structure. Humans are heckin' complicated. But the combination of all of these things help dictate where your peg is placed on that giant pegboard. To help illustrate this, I want to show you the web dashboard of a software tool that I've helped develop. It's called Cloverleaf, and it visualizes these three identity drivers of personality, proficiency, and preference as data, compares them to others on the team, and then delivers insights. Remember when I said that Cody wasn't me? Well, this is me. This is my personality, my proficiency, and my preference as data. And here's how I stack up with others on a team. Now, I'm only going to focus on the cultural preferences portion of this dashboard, and more specifically, the spectrum of organizational control, because, well, there's a lot of stuff up there, and we've already used both of our intermissions for the day. Organizational control answers the question, how do I control outcomes? People with loose control, well, they improvise by embracing spontaneity and innovation. People with strict control, they mitigate risk by embracing efficiency and planning. This is what a team I'm on looks like. Now, I'm not an outlier in this team, and that's okay. I don't have to be, not for what this team is doing. As a writer with loose control, I'm prone to write when the mood strikes. And that works for me. It works for me on this team. But this team, well, this team benefits from an outlier because of the kind of work they are doing. This person right here, this dangerous, complicated, and beautiful person, they are an outlier in organizational control. And that's good for the shape of this team. She is also a writer, but she writes based on a schedule and a regimen. If I were to move onto that team, well, as a writer, my resume would match up, but because of this one cultural preference, I would be bad for the shape of this team. A person who would not normally fit in could become the perfect solution to a problem. Likewise, the wrong person in the wrong team for the wrong amount of time, it means that something's very wrong. See, I believe that outliers are either good or they're bad. It's impossible to be an outlier with just a neutral effect, which makes outliers really dangerous. So let's say you're in a team and all the outliers are good. Maybe you're even the positive outlier. Everything's great, it's peachy, good for you, Cody. Your mom and I are both very proud. What about those of us that are in situations where we're part of the pack, but the lone wolf is playing the wrong kind of jazz? I'm talking like Kenny G elevator jazz. No offense to Kenny G fans. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I do mean to offend Kenny G fans. How do you deal with a negative outlier? One that I've just said is the opposite of good. But I want to pause here and say that just because you're in a bad situation with a person does not necessarily mean that that person is bad. Yes, there are bad people out there, but that's a different TED Talk. Let's try to think back how Cody may have felt in his first and second situation. You know, when he was a round peg in a round hole trying to make a square out of a rubber band, as the common saying goes. It's possible that he doesn't know why he was unhappy. It's likely that he can't articulate the nuances of what was working and what wasn't. Now, something I haven't told you about Cody's situation is that these companies he wasn't fitting with, they were begging him to stay. See, they recognized their need for a positive outlier, but they weren't listening enough to Cody to know that it wasn't him. Cody was in a culture of his own. No one else shared his vocabulary or his mindset. Cody needed someone to empathize with him, to hear him, as the negative outlier, he needed someone to know what it felt like to be him. Empathy is not a tool for immediate change. It's a tool for immediate understanding. And when that understanding happens, Cody can be heard. Cody can be known. And maybe he would choose to change his place on that pegboard. And maybe, just maybe, if the team was really listening to Cody, they could change the shape of the team to fit him. But regardless, none of that change can effectively happen without first a clear view of where everyone stands. Otherwise, we're just assuming. What I'm getting at, and what I want everyone here to really consider and wrestle with, is this. Everyone is an outlier. And when an outlier acts, it's either positive or it's negative. It's up to each of us to know exactly where we stand and to put ourselves in appropriate situations so that our own personification of personality, proficiency, and preference can be a good thing. It's also up to us to empathize with the outliers we're around so that our team, whatever our team might be, can accomplish its goal. So the questions to ask yourself are, what shape is my team? How am I affecting that shape? Is it good? Is it hard? The stakes are too high to hope that we could just find the perfect fit. Because if you're in the wrong team, it puts strain on that rubber band and everyone else inside it. Yes, outliers, they're dangerous. But outliers are so valuable. Your mom is valuable. The person who makes your coffee, obviously, they're valuable. The person who cut you off on the freeway last week, they're valuable. The person sitting next to you right now is valuable. You are so valuable. You should get to know yourself. Thank you.